where you are in the world. It's always so fun to see like how many people are all over the world. I am in Hawaii right now, actually, hence my beautiful background. I'm staying here for almost 3 months. And I am in downtown Honolulu, which is why you can see all the lovely buildings behind me. All right, so we are going to be talking about how to eat just one piece of chocolate and how to really master moderation. This is a topic that I struggled with so much in my journey. So I am so excited to show you this today and really get to deep dive into how can we have the foods that we want, but also in amounts that feel good to our body. So you may have heard of the eat 80% healthy, eat 20% not so healthy saying as like a guideline of how to do moderation. Let me know if you have experienced this advice before. Now, on the surface, this can be helpful if we knew how to do it. But the problem is, I tried to follow this advice only to end up really frustrated when things didn't go as planned. So we're going to talk about what is eating in moderation anyways. Now, moderation is the avoidance of excess or extremes. So the avoidance of too much of something. And let's talk about a real life example of what this might look like. So I remember I was once at this birthday party and there was tons of food around. It was some sort of event where there was like it was a big birthday party. There was lots of like a big dessert table was a big thing. And I remember there was this big dessert table with 20 different types of cookies and cupcakes and cake and all of the things. And I had gotten like 4 different ones because I just couldn't choose. Yet I saw my friend over there who ended up just getting one of them and having a couple bites of them. And I was so confused on how she could just keep engaging in the conversation and just move on. And this is what we want to learn how to do, is how to have these foods in amounts that really do just light us up and make us feel energized while also enjoying the moment. So this is the type of eater we're going to be. Now, in order to eat in moderation, right, that means to eat without excess. So what that shows us is that there's not one clear, right definition. We get to decide what moderation means to you. So right now, that might just be having half of a bar of a chocolate if you're used to binging on a full one. Or maybe if you've gotten it down to half bar of chocolate, you're working on being satisfied with just 1 or 2 pieces. And sometimes I don't even love the word moderation. I think it can feel a bit like restriction, but I know it's the word that we probably use the most to describe this. So you can think about if there's a word that resonates with you even better, like eating in alignment or eating with exactly how much feels good. But just getting clear for a moment on what even eating in moderation means for you and what you want that to look like in your unique eating habits. So a little bit about me, if you're not familiar. Hello, I'm Amber Avila. I go by the Confident Eater everywhere because I teach you how to have confidence with your eating habits by stop binge eating and overeating. I started my journey with a lot of extreme calorie restriction. And at first I thought, okay, if as long as I cut back my calories, I can be healthy. But then I really got into the world of nutrition and I started demonizing a lot of foods. I started demonizing sugar and demonizing fat and all of these things. And then carbs too. They really all got demonized for me. And after this experience of this extreme calorie restriction, I went to the far other side then, and then I started binge eating. And I found myself in this middle ground of overeating and binge eating where I wasn't really sure who could help me or how I could get out of it. Because sometimes I would have like a full binge on like half of a cake, and then sometimes it would just be overeating a couple of cookies. So I struggled with this exact problem of how to find the balance with food in this area of moderation, which is why it's a main pillar in my Confident Eater program now. But I just thought this was just who I am. I am just the dessert queen. I would never say no to dessert and I would just stuff myself. I'd want to get it all in at once. Now, something about me is I love to travel the world. And whenever I was on these travels, I would get so much anxiety around restaurants and eating out and passing the ice cream stands. Or even I would just go to a friend's house and I would get anxiety if I saw that they had ice cream around or they had special snacks that I wasn't used to eating, because then I would end up binge eating on them. I'd end up overly full and stuffed, and I just end up saying, screw it. I'd be so guilty and ashamed, and I just keep going and continue with the bad eating. So I want you to know that I've been where you are. I am not just someone who thought this would be fun to teach, although I do love teaching about this, But really, I'm here today because I have been in your shoes. I know what it's like to feel like you're addicted to food and you can't get out of it. But there is a way out through this trigger food process, which I'm going to teach you today. It is literally life-changing. It is completely transformed my relationship with food and hundreds of other people as well. So the problem that people run into of why moderation feels so hard is first we start to have these good and bad food labels. So we start to think, hey, the donut is bad and the apple is good. Now, of course, these two foods are very different nutritionally, but when we charge them with morality, that's when we start to get into this good bad labeling, right? So when we say the apple is good and then we eat the apple, we feel better about ourselves. But then the problem is if we say the donut is bad, we feel worse about ourselves. So really this makes it into, are we a good or bad person? Which puts a lot of weight on our decision of how to eat food. It makes it really hard. So if you're someone who's thinking about food all day, or you just have a really hard time deciding what to eat, you feel like you're in this constant indecision, it's probably because you have a lot of good, bad food labels and you're putting so much pressure on yourself to make this decision, thinking that there's a right answer and then there's a wrong answer. And I don't know which one it is. I don't know which one I'm going to choose today. And what that leads us into ultimately is all or nothing thinking, which is exactly as it sounds, where there's no in between. We're either going crazy and all out with our eating, finally having what we want, saying YOLO, and that leaves us feeling guilty and overly stuffed, or we're not having it at all. And then we are left feeling deprived. Now, what's really interesting is if you feel guilty when you're eating, you can still feel deprived. So even if you give yourself the screw it mentality, I'm just going to eat it all, you might actually leave that feeling like, I didn't even get it in. I still need more. You still feel deprived in a sense because a lot of times we don't feel like we've had any food because we were so mindless and zoned out in our head the whole time. That guilt overpowers any of our senses. So we don't actually taste the food and we want more. We get to the end of the bag of chips, the end of the bowl, and all of a sudden this desire keeps coming up. We want to keep eating and eating and eating, and we feel so confused because we thought we allowed ourselves permission to have it. This is when people come to me and say, well, I was trying intuitive eating and I allowed myself permission to have it and it didn't work. Probably because you're starting to get this all or nothing thinking. And then we're confused and we're wondering, why did we want more? But that's because we were so frantic during this experience. We're not in our body at all. And eating is a bodily experience. So that's how we want to experience it, is by tuning into our taste buds, the sensations. So when that happens and we're not in our body, we're going to want to eat more. So there's really no win-win in this situation. It's a lose-lose with all or nothing thinking. Then the final problem I see that people running into is they're putting food on a pedestal. Now, this is one we're often not aware of, but I see people doing this all the time. So this is when we have thoughts or say things like, it's so yummy. It's really special. I never get this. You know, we just got done with the holidays a little bit ago, and the holiday season, that's a big one of like, I just never get this and it's dangerously good. Get this away from me. I don't want to be around it. I just can't stop myself when I eat it. It's really just so good. Notice how you feel when you think these things. Okay, this is creating an extra layer of desire for food that wasn't already there. Because now that food sounds really freaking delicious. Like, I don't know what I was just describing, but I want it now because these thoughts are what create the desire for it. Now, we can do this with any food and how we talk to ourselves. You can do this with spinach. You know, like I love putting lemon juice on spinach. And I love how it gets all acidic and how tasty it is. I love the little crunch and the terry feeling of spinach. I love the feeling of the leaves in my mouth. It feels so cool. I love munching on them. I like the greenness of it. It makes me feel energized and healthy. Like now you probably want spinach because we're creating desire with our thoughts. So just notice if you're telling yourself a certain story around these foods. Because if you tell yourself how amazing this food is, it's going to make your life so much harder, and we're going to want to get it all in. If you have ever watched the show Selling Sunset, it's one of my favorites. It's just so much drama. But in that show, it's about realtors who are really rich in LA. And one of the girls got a Birkin bag for the first time. And I remember watching this episode and thinking it's so fascinating because a Birkin bag is just like, you know, it's a high quality bag. They're like $40,000 or something ridiculous. The reason that people want one though is because of how they think they'll feel when they get it. that if they get a Birkin bag, they're going to feel successful. And so they create a lot of desire for it with their thoughts. And you might be doing that same thing with food, where you imagine you're going to feel a certain way. I'm finally going to feel relaxed after my long day. I'm finally not going to feel bored. I'm finally going to feel pleasure. And if you're telling yourself you're going to feel these things around that food, then your brain's going to automatically start to create desire for it. So I want you to take a second and just imagine if you could eat one piece of chocolate and move on, or sub in your favorite food in here, one chip and move on, one slice of bread and move on, one normal size plate of pasta and move on. Get clear on all the amazing ways your life would change, because this is what's going to help us want to do this, right? It's what's going to help us see, yes, this is why I don't want to eat more. I have very clear reasons. So you might start to realize that you'll finally feel in charge of your eating decisions. You'll feel empowered and more balanced with them. You'll trust yourself to make decisions around food, which builds up confidence. You'd move throughout your day feeling light and energetic, not weighed down by all the extra food at lunch or saying screw it at dinner time, which will help you sleep better. And you'll ultimately be able to take control over your health and weight again. Because anytime we eat into excess or extremes, it's going to have a major impact on our digestive system and every other system of health involved. So let's think about some of the things you might have tried before that might not be working for all or nothing, for eating things in moderation with the all or nothing thinking, with all the things we just talked about. So the first thing you might have tried is keeping it out of your house. Now, trust me, I have done this more times than I count. It can make sense. If I binge on sugar all the time, let me just keep sugar out of the house. If I can't control myself around chips, I'm just not going to buy chips. They're just not going to be around me. But the problem is you'll still come across this food and go crazy on it. Because in our world, these foods still exist. You're going to go to a birthday party and you're going to encounter cake. You're going to go over to a Super Bowl party and there's going to be chips out. You're going to go into these situations where you need to interact with this food. And if you've never interacted with these foods before in a healthy way, you've never had any practice with them, the only way you know how to interact with them is by binging on them. So the second you start to eat them, you'll realize, oh my gosh, I can't stop. I don't know how to eat this food. I never get this. And then you keep going. There's no in between because you've never really tried with this food. You've never really allowed yourself to figure it out. The second thing you might have tried is calorie counting or points or Noom, which is ultimately just calorie counting in disguise. This feels right at the surface because it's like, well, I can eat whatever I want. But the problem with calorie counting is you feel you can eat whatever you want within this limit. There's still this limit involved, and that's where you start to feel restricted. Like, I can eat whatever I want if it's less than 1,700 calories. I can eat whatever I want, but my snack can't be over 200 calories. And that's when that restriction comes up. And when our brain starts to feel restricted, and it hears this limit, you want to rebel against it. And at the end of the day with calorie counting, we just have this strict number. And if we start to go just a bit over, we might go into all or nothing thinking of saying, I've blown it. Let's just have that second donut that I wanted all day long because I've already ruined it. So might as well keep going. So it's still reinforcing this black and white thinking and rules, which we're trying to get away from. Natural eaters don't have rules. They have guidelines around food, but it's not strict limits. The third thing you might have tried is intuitive eating. Now, I am on the side of intuitive eating. I really value tuning into your hunger and fullness and learning the signals of your body. But the problem I have about it is in my journey, I found all these Instagram accounts, all these influencers that said, just bring all the foods into the house. And so I did, and I tried to eat them without any structure, any direction on how to listen to my body. And so naturally I failed and I ate them. Because again, I hadn't gone through any specific process to learn how to bring these foods in. So if you've done that before too, and you're like, well, I tried to bring it in, but I overate, I would question, did you actually do it in a very structured, mindful, proven way based on science and psychology that has been time and tested time and time again? Probably not. So the problem with the intuitive eating is you're not really knowing the how behind it. It's a good idea, but you're not getting clear directions. And this is kind of the same thing with saying you'll eat 80-20, like I'll eat 80% healthy, 20% not so healthy. It's just a theoretical idea that you have no idea actually how to implement it. And then again, 80-20 can also turn into a strict rule that you want to rebel against. And really your days are all different. It's like, how can we know exactly the perfect amount of food from a number every single day. All the days are different. Our weekends might look different than weekdays. And who's to say that sometimes our eating shouldn't look more like 70% healthy and 30% unhealthy, or 90% healthy and 10% unhealthy? And how do we categorize what's healthy or not? Does a protein bar go unhealthy? Does it go into unhealthy because it's processed? If we have a healthy ice cream, is that processed and bad, or is it part of the healthy? Like, we can't know. So we need to get away from these rules to really learn how to tune into our body. And ultimately, all of these too are missing that mindset piece. We want to change our brain from the inside out, not just learning random tips and tricks. And I'm going to give you some very helpful tips today that will be easy to implement, but we need to work on our thoughts around food. That's going to make it stick. That's going to make it permanent. And that's also what I cover extensively in my Confident Eater program. All right, so let's go over this 6-step process. You might want to get out a pen and paper to write these things down so you have them there available for you. And this is my trigger food process that I teach my clients. Now, this is kind of a pared down version of it. So you're going to get the first intro to it, but I promise you, you can make so many changes with this alone. So the first step you're going to do is you're going to pick one food that feels triggering. Once we have one food, we can actually master it. Because if we feel like once we start eating this food, we can't stop, we want to make sure we really do this intentionally and sit down with it and enjoy it. So I want you to think about any food that brings up a strong emotion. So any sort of fear where you feel like, oh my gosh, I see this food and I just get scared of it. If it brings up anxiety, if you feel really guilty when you have it and it sends you into all or nothing thinking. So if you have one, feel free to unmute or put in the chat, but just take a minute and think about it for yourself. What food feels triggering for me that I just feel like once I have it, I just can't stop? Because the truth is, it's not the food. Unless everyone around the world is binging on it every time they have it, it's not inherently addictive. It's the thoughts that are coming up that are addictive. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, the reason we start with one food is so we can build trust with ourselves and we can build this progress and momentum over time with it. We want to get to the point where we almost get tired of this food, because once you start to get tired of it, this amazing thing happens that my clients tell me all the time. They'll come back to our coaching call and they go, oh my gosh, Amber, you won't ever believe it. I got tired of eating Oreos. Or, oh my gosh, I didn't actually want the chips. And when you have that moment, it shows you're in charge. So my food that I always struggled with was Nutella, because with Nutella, it was something that I always had around the house. It was always available, and I'd always end my binge with it. And I would even I would just stick my fingers in it. If we're being honest here, I wouldn't even get out a spoon or a knife to eat my Nutella because I didn't want to say I was eating. I just wanted to do it really quickly. So I'd start with a finger and then another and another and another until I'd eaten so much Nutella I was sick. So what I did with Nutella is I realized I ever want to eat this food, I need to stop eating it only when I'm binge eating, right? It only happened when I wanted to binge. I never ate that food normally. And so I started including it at breakfast. I started putting a scoop of it on my oatmeal or spreading it on toast, dipping it with apples, because I wanted to teach myself that I could have this food and that I can trust myself. And I was going to change my relationship with it no matter what. Now, I know it feels scary to start bringing in a food that feels triggering, but it's only been triggering in the past. You can change it. I'm a living example. I have lots of other examples on my podcast of other people who have done this process too and have come out of it. It is 100% possible to change how we think about this food. Okay, second, you are going to decide how much you are going to have before you start eating it. Before you put it in your mouth, get clear. When we do this, this is going to use our higher brain. Our higher brain is in charge of planning and looking at our future. It's in charge of thinking about our goals, our visions, and our higher brain is the true version of us. So it is going to make it so much easier for yourself if before you put the delicious food in your mouth, you think ahead with your planning brain and say, what would actually feel good here? Now, this isn't to be super strict. This isn't to say you're only allowed one piece of chocolate, and that's it, no more for you. We want to take a very loving, gentle mindset, right? Think about if you have any kids, how you would talk to your kids about a treat. You'd be like, honey, we're gonna have one because that's just is what's gonna feel best in your body. I don't want you to feel sick. I don't want you to stomach ache. It's really empowering. So this is just there to be intentional about it. Now, be realistic here. Again, if you are used to binging on chocolate or whatever your food is, try to have half the bar first, or even a full bar of chocolate. If you try to have one piece of chocolate going from that big binge, it might feel a little difficult, and that's okay. We're working on working our way down to smaller amounts, but we have to be okay with that in between. Because the truth is, you're already eating these foods now, and you're binging on them. So you're probably having a lot more than you actually imagine you're having. And so once we start to include them intentionally, sometimes it can feel like you're eating more of it, but you're actually eating less. You just were so zoned out when you were binge eating them, you didn't even realize how much you were eating. So our third step is to intentionally include it at a meal every single day. Now, I know when you hear every single day, it freaks you out because you're like, I cannot possibly eat this food every day without gaining weight or having horrible health consequences. But the reason we are doing this every day is because we need to show your brain it's not going away. You don't need to eat it now because it's going to be there for you again tomorrow or even later tonight in just a few hours. Like this food is not that big of a deal. We're trying to take this food off of this big old pedestal that we put it on and bring it down. Okay, so we're included at a meal. We're going to do it sitting down at a table, booty in a chair. And sitting down helps us get out of action mode. So when we're just standing around, we're go, go, go. We're do, do, do. Our brain is getting ready to take action on something when we're standing. So we need to sit down to kind of show our brain, hey, brain, we're eating right now. Let's pay attention to this. Then I want you to take this food and I want you to put it on your plate next to other foods. So having it all together. So if you have your sandwich for lunch and your salad, you're also going to put that Reese's cup right next to it. This is going to help your brain start to neutralize this food and take away those good, bad food labels. So it will see the food all together and say, oh, it's just food, right? It's something I need to obsess over. A lot of times the pedestal comes from two. You might have been taught this as a kid or have started doing it as an adult, where it's like, I have to eat the good foods, the healthy foods before I get the dessert, before I get the bad thing. And that teaches us, again, to put that food on a pedestal, which makes us want more and more and more of it. So to take it off of the pedestal, we're going to have it at our meal times. You can eat it first. You don't have to eat it last either. There's no rule that says you need to eat dessert last. You're going to eat it anyways, and you're so excited about it, have it first. Why not? Then we have no distractions when we're eating this at our meals. Because these trigger foods, they tend to be more on the higher calorie side, it's important that we don't miss that satisfaction signal and we can notice this taste bud change. If you've ever eaten a food after you've already binged, you'll notice that it doesn't taste very good. Versus when you eat a food when you're really hungry, like when you take that first bite, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so excited to eat this. And the reason why that happens, why the food tastes good when we're hungry and not so good when we're not, is because our taste buds will literally change to make the food like taste bad, to make it taste worse. Because that is an adaptation we have evolutionary to help us to stop eating. Because if we were to just eat and eat and eat all day long, we would deplete all of our resources. We didn't always have a Target and a grocery store down the road. We had to go forage for our food. So we needed to be satisfied when we got full. So we will notice the satisfaction and the taste bud change when we're not distracted. So no phones, no iPads, no TV, at least in the start until you start to understand these signals a bit more. Then the last reason we have this at a meal is so that we don't need food to fill our hunger. If you're trying to fill your hunger with gummy bears, you're going to need a lot of gummy bears. So we want to make sure we have other foods with protein and fat and fiber on our plate. So we're not trying to fulfill our hunger with a food that is going to be hard to fill hunger for. Like ultimately, most of our trigger foods are more for pleasure than hunger. And having these other macronutrients on our plate is what's going to help us balance blood sugar. So it's not to say you can never have ice cream in the middle of your day, but you're probably going to feel a lot worse if you have ice cream in your middle of the day versus if you have it during a meal, because when you have protein and fat and fiber to help digest those carbs with it, it's going to keep our blood sugar a lot lower and make us feel a lot better. Okay, so then we're going to shift our thoughts to abundance. So right now, we're thinking of food as scarce, so that's why it's hard to stop eating it. Oh, I thought I had a slide for that one. So let me talk about some of these thoughts that sound like scarcity, right? Scarcity thoughts sounds like there's only a little bit limited amount of it. I can only have so much, never enough food for me, and I don't know when I'm going to get it again. That makes us want to hold on tight to this, and then this process will not work. If you are telling yourself, I can't have more, I'm not allowed more, it's not going to be enough, you're not going to be able to eat these foods in moderation. So what abundance thoughts sound like instead is I can have this again later. I'm safe. I have plenty. This is no big deal. I'm in charge of how much I eat. I get to decide when I stop. You see how those thoughts feel so empowering and they feel like, yeah, so it's not going anywhere. I have plenty, which is the truth. You do have plenty. We live in a world with a lot of food. So there's always going to be plenty for us. Okay, so after we do this, we have eaten our food, we have gotten into our abundance thoughts. Then fifth, we are going to move on with our life. So I want you to get out of the kitchen. Put away the food. I would actually recommend putting away the food beforehand. So what that looks like is like, for example, I had a client, Ginger, who you can listen to her story on the podcast as well. She really struggled with peanut butter. She would have like a third of the jar of peanut butter every single time she ate it. And we discovered that one of the key things she was missing was she wasn't putting the food away. She was like having the peanut butter out next to her, and she was like kind of putting the spoon with her meal, but she would just go back and really easily grab it. So I want you to put the food away, like take out your tablespoon of peanut butter, put it away in the cabinet, and then sit down with it and eat it. Okay, and really questioning, like, we don't need to be digging around in the cabinets. Be onto yourself. If your brain's like, well, I just want to see what food we have. You know what food you have. And if you're not hungry, there's no reason to be in the kitchen anymore. The kitchen is not a hangout place. It's to cook and eat food. And our final and last step is to celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. When we celebrate, we are strengthening that new habit. This is going to be like neural super glue in our brain that is going to ingrain what we want to do when we are able to do this new habit. Now, I know it feels weird at first to celebrate eating chocolate. Like, chocolate, and why are we celebrating that? But what we're celebrating is not necessarily the fact that you're eating the chocolate, but that you're eating the chocolate in a way that feels really good, that you're eating it in moderation. That's the part we're celebrating, the part that you sat down with this food, you ate it mindfully. Okay, so when you do that, your brain will remember how proud and excited you were the next time you get an urge and how fun it was to just have those 2 squares of chocolate and move on. And think how fun it would be to not binge on this food. So celebration is a non-negotiable in order to change. We must do it to get these new habits to stick. So again, you eat that one piece of chocolate, say, I'm so proud of you for learning how to eat things in moderation. So the biggest thing I want you to take away today, and I want you to really remember, is that the only way to learn how to moderate all foods is by practicing eating them in moderation. You cannot learn to ride a bike by watching videos. You have to get out there and do it. You have to actually try it. And sometimes we'll fall down on that bike and it sucks to fall down, but you get back up so you can learn because it's important for you. And the same thing is with food. You have to get out there and try to start practicing these in moderation because in order to ever be comfortable around them, we need to get this experience in and to change our relationship with them. And you have to do it in an intentional way. You can't just hope it happens. You have to sit down and do this process, which I can tell you, you're not likely doing right now. Most people, when they come to me, they don't usually tell me, hey, I've been having a really hard time eating chocolate, but every time I'm doing it, I'm sitting down with it at my meals. I'm closing my eyes, I'm savoring it, I enjoy it, and then I open my eyes and I eat more. That's usually when it happens to people. So make sure you're doing it intentionally before you say, oh, this process isn't going to work for me. Now, after a few weeks of doing this process, you will start to notice a huge shift in your thoughts, feelings, and actions around foods. Now, you might wonder, should I do this one food for a while and then this other food? You might have multiple trigger foods that you need to work on. So this process can take a couple of weeks sometimes a couple of months, especially if you're doing this on your own and you don't have anyone to coach you through this. But know that the good news is once you knock down one trigger food and you start to realize, hey, I've got this, I can eat this in moderation. I like to think about it as dominoes, where all of a sudden then another food you struggled with, it starts to become easier. And then the other one becomes easier and the other one becomes easier because your thoughts start to generalize out. Now, if you have like very different thoughts about certain foods, there's one food that's coming to mind where you're like, this food, I am just so stressed about. And this food I'm like a little stressed about, but it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes we have very different thoughts. We might have to go through this process twice with both of these foods. But again, if you have like similar foods, like for example, the category of sugar, some people say, I just struggle with sugar in general. You don't have to eat every food that's ever had sugar in it to master sugar. Sometimes you'll just do one or two and it'll start to generalize out and then you'll feel good around all sugar. Now, if you want help with this to make this process happen so much faster and to heal your relationship with food in every area, the Confident Eater program is going to be for you. This is the program that will give you the step-by-step instructions on how to become a natural intuitive eater. It's helped over 100 of women, and this is how I did it too. So you're going to get my exact blueprint. We use the latest brain science in my program, and you're going to want to make sure you stay on to the end here because I have a really awesome brand new special bonus going on right now, and we'll also take any questions at the end. So how the program works is it's 6 months and you get the 6 steps to stop overeating and binge eating. So we go over 6 pillars. The first one that we start with is the positive food mindset. So this one comes before the trigger food process, which you learned a bit about today, because we need to understand the root cause of why we're eating too much food and how to manage our thoughts and emotions. This is an essential skill, not only to stop emotional eating, but to help everything else in your life. I have so many clients who go through the program and come out saying, not only did this program have a major impact on my ability to stop binge eating, to have a healthy relationship with food, but also I was able to have a better relationship with my husband. I became a better runner. I had one of my clients who just ran a 20K because she wasn't having to deal with all this extra weigh down weight and food that she was eating. She became more patient with her kids too. So these are tools that are going to help you so much in other areas of life too. Now, the trigger food process you just learned a bit about, but we go so much more in depth and I really guide you through your unique foods and how we can troubleshoot those. And you're gonna learn how to stop obsessing over them and really feel in control and at peace around anything in the world. Next, third is our stress-free urge solution. This is what helps you rewire your brain by calmly allowing binge urges to pass by. Your urges are ultimately the root cause of why you're still binge eating today. When you get that desire of like, I just feel like I need to eat, I used to call it like my ghost experience where I was just like out of my body, I would just eat. That is you having an urge. So you're going to get so many tools to allow you to not act on that urge, which is ultimately going to create the brain of a natural confident eater. Then we are going to learn about hunger and fullness. So you're going to learn how to use your own body's signals to guide you as a natural eater. So we're not using calorie counts or meal plans. We are using what our own natural calorie counter that's built in is saying and telling you. Fifth, we go into confidence. So you are going to build unshakable confidence in your body so you can always show up as your best, highest self. What your body weight now is just a circumstance. It can change. And if you don't do the work to change your thoughts around your body, you're always going to feel insecure around it. I think we've all had experience where we've lost weight before and we still felt like shit about ourselves because we didn't do the mindset work. So we really go into the mindset work of making you feel confident at any size, at any piece of in any piece of clothing. And finally, six, we wrap up with learning how to maintain your progress. This is how you make your new life of food freedom permanent. We shift your identity. Because what can happen when you've struggled with food for a while is it starts to become part of who you are. You just think, I'm just someone who struggles with food. I'm just someone who overeats. So it can feel hard at times to believe that I can become a natural eater. But we really do the work to shift these beliefs so you can believe, yes, this is who I am. And that will come as we go through the process as well to make it easy to maintain these thoughts and habits for life. So this is my client, Rachel, who has been through the program. So she had said in her testimonial that her experience was so life-changing, but she was a personal trainer herself, and she thought that she could figure it all out, that she knew everything. But saying yes to Amber's program was the best decision I have ever made. She gave me the tools to start listening to my body and mind, allowing me to make decisions, develop habits I never thought possible. She had been dealing with binge eating and overeating for almost 10 years, thinking she was going to be battling these urges forever, but I helped her change that. Now, what I think is so important about Rachel is I have worked with so many professionals that think they should know how to do this. I've worked with personal trainers. I've worked with other eating coaches. I've worked with nurses and doctors and psychologists and therapists. Like I've worked with all of these people because what I teach is so unique. And I'm not just saying that. I truly started this program because I couldn't find the solution. I went to therapy for years. I read all the books and nothing was sticking with me until I started to learn about the neuroscience of the brain and how our brain actually thinks about food and how we actually change it. So how this program works, is you're going to get 6 months of private one-on-one coaching calls with me for 50 minutes a week. So this is where we are going to celebrate, learn, coach together, or we're going to have a strong team to tackle and solve your eating issues using the latest psychology, of course. These calls are what really give you the accountability that you've been missing right now. So a lot of times when I would slip up, I would just want to shove it under the rug. Just say, I forgot that I binged. I don't want to look at that. And that keeps you stuck not doing anything different. So we get caught in this spiral when we're on our own. But when you have a coach who's there for you every single week, I will be there to help you get back up and on track with your eating and health goals every single week. The next thing you're going to get is unlimited text and voice message support. So yes, it is seriously unlimited. I am here to hold your hand and guide you every single step of the way on your journey to food freedom, so you never feel lost on what to do again. I so wish I had this on my journey. The ability to be able to just pick up your phone real quick, have a coach in your back pocket and say, hey, Amber, ask a professional. I am really struggling because I just had a binge. I'm feeling really shitty about myself. I just feel like I want to give up and I just want to keep eating and there's no hope. I will be there to talk you out of it and get you back on track. So you'll have that anytime you need it. Then you're going to get on-demand lessons and worksheets. So you're going to get instant access to the Confident Eater course with materials covering everything you need to know about becoming a natural eater. So I do have a full online course and app that you're going to get. This is going to teach you how naturally thin people eat, how the habits they have formed. And I walk you through this. So this is an option for it to be taught live. So we can do it on our calls. So you don't have to worry about any additional homework, but you can always go back and revisit these lessons. So this is really nice. Like if you are struggling with urges, you can go back and review our urge lesson. I have something that'd be really good for the trigger foods too. I have a trigger food worksheet that you can print out and you can follow along with the process with it. I have a daily eating hypnosis audio that also works really good to reprogram your mind around these foods so you can really visualize yourself getting through the trigger food process. So if you have just 1 hour a week, we can help you stop binge eating. So this is my client, Jarrell. Jarrell was actually one of the ones who was a nurse. He went from 5 times a week overeating down to 0. So Jarrell said, I can't say enough good things about Amber and her coaching. I've struggled with eating for so long. I didn't think I'd ever be able to change this. With Amber's coaching, I can now confidently say I don't overeat anymore. Her constant support and fresh perspective were exactly what I needed to make this change in my life. Something about Jarrell that he really loved was we have a hunger scale tool. So Jarrell told me that he used to live in like the ultra full range at all times. He never really felt like he got hungry. But then after the program, he was feeling hungry on a consistent basis and he wasn't scared of it anymore. He wasn't scared to feel it. He wasn't scared anything bad was happen. And because of that, he felt so much better throughout his day. And we actually just had one of our last calls together. We were both tearing up on the call as he said that this can exist forever. It's the first time he's ever said that. And I want you to know that it doesn't have to be a struggle or a fight. It is possible for these results to last. So I have a really awesome bonus going on right now, and that is a custom journal. So this custom journal is something that is brand new. I've just created it, and you are going to get a physical copy of this shipped to your house, right to your doorstep, that includes weekly prompts to guide your confident eater journey. So it's going to have things that are based on the program, based on psychology, helping you really unpack and stay on track with these eating habits. So if you book your consult by this Sunday, January 26th at midnight. You get in, your consultation can be for next week, this week or next week. And if you book it by then, we'll get this copy to you as well. So here's Brooke. Brooke is someone who had done a lot of other programs. So it's also not uncommon for people to come to me after having done other coaching programs. So even other coaching programs, I've seen the inside of them. People have told me about them and they're just not quite as effective because they're really not dealing with the root causes in the urges and doing the trigger food process. They're just giving more generic advice that you can honestly find in a book. So Brooke said that her eating disorder was consuming her life. She couldn't go to holidays or go to dinner with friends because she would be worried about eating all the food in sight. My brain felt like it would explode with all the urges. After finding Amber and going through her program, I feel a sense of lightness and trust in myself. I wish I would have found her sooner. I would have recovered earlier. If I knew I wouldn't need to gain weight in order to be healed, I would actually lose weight. Thank you, Amber, for changing my life. So this is actually a really common misconception that if you are healing your relationship with food, you're going to either gain weight or stay the same weight. I'm not going to guarantee weight loss because I don't know everyone's unique body and everyone is so different. But if we stop overeating and binge eating, you will probably lose weight. If you're continuing to gain weight, there's probably something else at play. And I want you to get that checked out and figured out with me so we can make sure you actually find your natural body weight. Now, I also have a full money back guarantee. I have built this Confident Eater program to ensure the top level of support with the best techniques in the industry, and I have it backed up with this full money back guarantee to ensure that you stop binge eating. So you have two options. You can continue wasting time, money, and energy trying to DIY this health journey, having random consistent actions, and you might just keep being stuck overeating. I want you to really get clear with yourself of where will you be in 6 months if you continue to stay the same. And this isn't to scare you or to say that you can't do it on your own, but this is just to be honest with yourself. If you've been trying for years on trying to solve these eating habits, you are spending so much extra time that does not need to be spent. Whereas in 6 months in this program, this could be something you never have to deal with again. So that's our second option, is to get this step-by-step proven plan to stop overeating. You'll have the latest psychology to make sustainable habit changes for good. Really imagine yourself 1 year from now, 6 months from now, where you've completely stopped overeating. You're living in alignment with your goals and who you want to be. You're feeling free, energized, and confident. That future is actually so much closer than you think. And it all starts with this one step. I can help you stop binge eating for good. You don't have to do this alone. So your next step is there will be a link in the chat and on the replay page with a link to book a free consultation call with me. You pick a time that works for you, and then on your consultation call, we get to know you deeper and if the program is for you. A lot of people, even just from the consultation alone, will walk away with so many good insights on why they're binge eating, why they're getting stuck, and how to change. So even if you're not sure if the program is for you, that is exactly what the consultation call is for, is to help you decide, is this right for me? And then finally, you'll end up being binge free for life. We'll start your Confident Eater journey to create the habits of a natural eater. You'll get your fun custom journal bonus in the mail, and we'll get going. So that is all I have for today. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can always contact me at these places. We have my email here, Amber Avila Coaching, if you have something more personally you want to email me at. If you are not following me on Instagram, feel free to check me out there for some more awesome tips. And I also have my podcast on there. I mentioned a few episodes today where you can hear people's success with the trigger food process and in the Confident Eater program. You can hear about their journeys, how they stop binge eating, and get some awesome insights. All right, well, I'll let you guys get going. Have a good rest of your day.